Hello, everyone out there in podcast world. I hope you're having a wonderful day. You are listening to or watching the Service Business Mastery podcast. I'm your host, Tersh Blissett, sitting virtually next to my co-host, Joshua Crouch. And today we have some exciting stuff. We're going to talk about hiring and retaining team members. And Kimberly is great, scrappy Kimberly, as she's labeled herself there. Kimberly Wiefling she's in Silicon Valley now, works with people from all over the world, really, and is going to be
She's probably the only person in Silicon Valley that doesn't have a tech company.
probably. I don't know. Sometimes, I mean, working with people, it requires so much. I don't know. Maybe it's the thought process that maybe I'm wrong thinking this is that we need to be thinking about more technology. Maybe we need to get more focused on like back down to the basics, I guess. Is Josh, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously have a digital marketing company. I have a tech stack that's like this long. I mean, it's literally just,
every time you turn around, we're getting something else.
But the most important time that I ever spend on anything is not the automation, the Zapier, all this stuff, right, that we talk about. That's really cool. We nerd out on it, but it's making time for my team and training the team and making sure they have what they need and keeping them happy. Because as you guys all know, especially in the contractors world, summer's coming. It's going to get hot. And if you haven't taken care of your team to this point, it's only going to get worse when it gets hot and they're working 50, 60 hours a week or more.
Yeah.
Hopefully not more than that, but if they are working more than that, you got to take care of them and make sure that you have leadership in place, either if it's just yourself or your team have leadership where people actually want to work for that person and want to follow that person into battle, if you will, versus just doing it because of the paycheck. They want to actually help out the team and be part of it. So I think Kimberly's going to help us with that today.
It is really exciting to hear and see companies that where the team will go to battle for the leader. Like it's really awesome experience to say, like, these people will fall on the sword for their leader, and it doesn't happen because you've demanded that and you're this overbearing person that is just do it or else I'm going to fire you. It's definitely, today is not like it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, where like the thought process is do it because I pay you. And I've been guilty of that. It's like, so I have to tell people how wonderful of a job they did. I mean, let's be real. They did their job. I paid them. Like, it's an exchange of goods. It's not that way. I mean, it's really, that's the way I like being treated. I like to be like, I don't want to get accolades and everything else. Like, I just want to get paid for the thing that I did and that you asked me to do. And so to have to change that mentality, it took some doing on my behalf. So I'm super excited to hear what Kimberly has to say. And yeah, let's get started with today's show.
Are you looking for valuable business advice to reach that 7-figure revenue mark? Do you want actionable tips to properly navigate through every business challenge you encounter along the way? Let Tersh Blissett and Josh Crouch be your guide in getting you to the top here at Service Business Mastery. Tune in as they sit down with world-renowned authors in business, leadership, and personal growth who share valuable insights about management, marketing, pricing, human resources, and so much more. Let their nuggets of wisdom gold guide you in owning a thriving, profitable, and ever-growing business. Here are your hosts, Tersh and Josh.
Hey, Kimberly, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I love your hat, the little brand there. Wearing a tie with that kind of hat, it's just perfect.
Yeah, it's different. That's the way I'm a little different here. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background. And first off, I love your animation and just the whole feel and vibe you have, because it's early for you. And so I appreciate that. That's definitely not me. I'm not a morning person. So
Oh man, I work sometimes with global groups where I have to do from 3 to 7 a.m. workshops.
Oh,
And
no.
I just sleep in my clothes, wake up at 2:30, splash some water on my face, and get going.
Oh yeah.
It's mind expanding. Yeah.
That's awesome. So tell us about yourself and your
Okay.
background and everything.
So I was born in the rural parts of Western Pennsylvania, growing up, really wild and free in the woods. My dad was a welder. My brothers became welders. If I was a boy, I would have been a welder. But since I was a girl back then, it's like, oh, she can't be a welder. So I joined the military. I went into the U.S. Air Force the day I turned 18. I learned to repair electronics on jets and helicopters and things like that. Then I was stationed in Germany for a little while during the Iranian hostage crisis. And
Wow.
I was driving to work one day and a jet is coming over and making really loud noises, really low, and just crashes about 4 cars ahead of me, blows up. My girlfriend's car in front of me, she's on fire. And I'm like, crap. So it kind of put me off of flying. But so I mean, for the next 20 years after that, when the plane would fly overhead, even 45,000 feet, I would just run for my life.
Yeah.
And so I fly pretty much every month for the last 20 years, going all over the world, working with people until, the pandemic. And so then I became Miss Virtual, doing all my work with my pajamas from the waist down. I have education in physics. I have a master's in physics and a bachelor's in chemistry and physics, but don't write me off. I have useful skills too.
We didn't
That's
say
awesome.
anything, I swear.
I didn't say a word.
Yeah. So now I mostly work with human beings, right? Leadership, team effectiveness, organizational culture. And I wrote a book about project management, about all the stupid things people do wrong repeatedly over and over again. And that gets me invited all over the world to speak to different organizations like in the Project Management Institute. But I'm so happy to be here with you today, talking with people about the real businesses and the challenges they face. And there are absolutely ways to dramatically improve the results you're getting in your business. And it's not rocket science.
Well, and here's the thing, contractors specifically, even so technology has always been slow to adapt to our industries because it's been paper and pen for 30, 40, 50 years. And the technology is really starting to boom in our industry. But with that, it's also a very people-oriented business. Most of the people that listen to this show and the people we know are residential or commercial contractors. That means they have one-on-one interaction with somebody that's a decision maker every single day. And that people side of the business it's funny. Even though it's been a people business for as long as possible, it's coming out of like the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s where you kind of just told someone what to do and people were excited to work overtime. It's not the same anymore. And we see contractors struggle with that. And even, ourselves, we came, when I was the first office I managed, our job hiring ads, unlimited overtime was like one of the top things that we promoted. And today you do that, people are like, they're going to start making fun of you, probably share it and have some meme attached to it. Like it's not going to be the same thing. So how can we, where can we start this is a deep topic, so it's hard to start one thing, but as far as like the one leader
holes we could go in,
like as far as the top level leader of the business, the owner, field manager, office manager, what kind of things do they need to be wary of and think about when they're talking to their team and they're interacting with their team? I guess we can start there and we'll start diving.
Yeah. Well, first, everybody needs to understand that there is a coming worker shortage globally, including in the US, at least 2 or 3% worker shortage, but some countries like Germany and Japan, 17% worker shortage. And when you have this kind of worker shortage, you really got to be thinking about how do I attract, engage, and retain the people I need to be successful in my business. And all the research that I've looked at over the years and my experiences, hey, the leadership totally determines the success of the business because there's something called the Gallup Employee Engagement Research. And been studying, how many people are really engaged at work. And in the US, you might want to guess. What do you think? Do you know?
I would say so. So like based out of an 8-hour period, how Is that what you mean?
So what
Or
percentage of people come to work engaged and ready to
engaged.
give discretionary effort, extra, on behalf of their employer?
More than their responsibility, like more than what they
Yeah.
were required. I would say probably 30%.
You're
I was going to
absolutely
go
right.
40.
It's been hanging at 30 to 33% for years.
I don't
1/3
know why
of
I'm
people,
celebrating that.
they come to work ready to do their job and give discretionary effort, a little extra they need to do, finish this pipe up before the end of the day, finish this thing before they go home. And like fully 2/3 of people come to work either to say, just pay me, or there's like 10% actively working against their own companies.
Yeah,
Crazy.
so that is wild, because for me, like I've had team members who are, actually, I'm not gonna say probably. I know I've had team workers actively working against the company. Not, I mean, fortunately not a lot, but I've had some who were disengaged, and I felt, man, like how do I get these people more engaged? Because I give bonuses and then give like time off and give rewards and have competitions and stuff like that. But then some people just like almost feel like they're naturally engaging and they want to be engaged. And then other people are naturally not engaged. For me, it's like, I just want to do my job and then kind of be left alone. It not necessarily like leave me alone, but it's like, if you ask me to do a task, I'm going to be hyper focused, and some of that's my ADD. I'm going to be hyper focused on this task, and I'm going to complete the task, and then I'll finish for the day. And if I can knock it out really fast, might as well do it today versus do it tomorrow. And I feel like that's the way everybody else should act too, and it's not the way it happens.
Well, if you go back to what is it that actually creates these kind of employees who come to work, they jump out of bed and they're eager to come in and do a great job and really contribute their highest and best version of themselves. The number one impact to that attitude is the direct manager. There's been some research recently in a book published, kind of gives away the whole secret when Gallup published a book called It's the Manager, but basically found that managers have the most highest impact on employee engagement. And employee engagement isn't some complicated thing. It's like, it starts off with such a basic thing. There's 12 questions that your employees have to say yes to be really engaged. And the first two are, do I know what's expected of me at work? And do I have the tools and equipment I need to do my job? Now, think of this. If you're a contractor and you have employees, they have to know what's expected of them and have materials and equipment to do their job. Only 40% of people in the U.S. say yes to those two questions. Seriously?
I believe it. It's because it's like, hey, here you're working for us. This is your job. Go do it, and just figure it out. I hear it all the time. I see it all the time. I mean, I've been guilty of it. You bring on a new field, a new trade. We bring in a new trade in, and I don't know how to do the trade, so I can't teach you how to do the trade. And so you have let's call it electrician. So you have a master electrician come on, they can do it, and then you hire an apprentice. Like, I'm not capable of teaching you how to do this, so I just tell you to go shadow him. And it's like, now all of a sudden I've delegated by abdication, and it's like I haven't actually done anything to teach you or to guide you in that direction. I just said, go learn, be a self-motivator, because I'm a self-motivator, and it doesn't work at all.
I know. Well, my dad was a construction project manager, steam fitter guy, and his attitude was just get the job done.
Yeah. Throw a wrench by their head.
I feel like that's a lot of the attitude still. I mean, it's changed, but I feel like in the trades, there's still an expectation of like, just get it done. Like, stop asking me questions. Just go.
And and of course I grew up around that kind of people, and that caring about the human side of things, that's called touchy-feely crap.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
But I'll go up the ladder of engagement, right? If if you have your people know what they need to do and they have the tools, materials, equipment to do it, what do they need after that to really be truly engaged in the work where they care? Is they got to get recognition. Someone at work has to care about them. Someone has to encourage them, and they get to do what they do best. Like, you don't hire a fish and ask them to climb a tree, you know. So
Wait a minute. I don't know about
They
that.
can't climb? What?
if you hire a fish and try to get him to climb a tree, that's your fault.
It is.
But
Now, I've
this-
been guilty of it. I mean, are you a mirror fogger? Like, can you fog a mirror? Yes, you're hired. Now, please go get this job done that you're extremely unqualified to do. And we do that all the time too. Josh and I, and Josh mentioned it before the show got started. How many times has a technician who is an amazing service technician in the field, great technical, great with the clients, fills out their paperwork properly, comes in and they're next in line and they get promoted as the service manager. Well, they don't have any type of managerial experience or background in managing people. They can manage themselves. They can manage their time. They're really technically strong individuals, but they are not the best managers of individuals.
Well, let's just talk about this right now, because when I ask people in my workshops, hey, raise your hand if you like to be managed, nobody raises their hand. Okay?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I summarize it like this: lead people, manage cows.
Awesome.
I like that.
And if you
So
go ahead and try
can
to manage people, you're gonna have to get this kind of hat, a devil hat, and your people are gonna be getting copies of this book called Boss Hole and leaving it on your desk.
Yeah, that's one of my things. That's almost a pet peeve for me. And my team knows it, so they do it all the time. But I cannot stand being called a boss, and so I'm fine with leader or call me by my name or anything like that. And so I'll get on a job site and have more than one of my guys there, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, boss man!" It's like, boy, I'm gonna knock you out, boy.
That's very dangerous. You know,
It is. And our culture is very joking, like that. And so they know that I know that they're not serious about that. And but I try to make it very clear that, hey, look, I'm not trying to be your boss. I don't want to be that guy. I just want to be the guy that helps to lead you. And if you have any questions, and I like to be told whenever I'm not leading properly. I love the constructive feedback. I don't like being cussed out about my inabilities, but I like to just, and I say I use that term very loosely. Like, I don't like it. Like, I'm not a glutton for punishment.
You do want it, so you know how you can get better.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely, go ahead.
It's very hard to get feedback from people who are depending on you for a paycheck. If you got a partner who doesn't work, a kid in college, and a mortgage payment, you're real careful. And if your boss says, "Oh, please give me some honest feedback," you know what they say? "Oh,
Okay.
no, everything's just fine."
Yeah, exactly.
So how do we get them to the point where they actually, like, because I'll genuinely ask and I genuinely want to know what they think, but get them to trust that I'm not going to blow up at them if they give me something that I don't want to hear. Like, how do we do that as leaders, so that way we can kind of get to that point where that we actually can make problems go away because we can fix them?
Well, you've hit on it, Josh. The number one cause of failure in teams, and most teams are not effective, they're just groups of people. The number one cause is they fail to build trusting relationships. And how do you build trust? What do you do when you want to build trust with somebody?
You have to be vulnerable for one.
Okay, now think about the construction industry and the HVAC industry.
Oh, that's
you worked in.
not
Do you
us
think
at
being
all.
vulnerable is one of the key attributes of people? No.
That is absolutely not one of ours. Our strong points.
No. So this is where we have to come to, is find a way you can somehow, in a safe and appropriate way, make yourself vulnerable to your people. it could be as simple as this saying, oh man, yesterday I really messed up. I made a big mistake. I really screwed up. Or saying, yeah, I got to do this thing. I'm really struggling. I really need your help. There's ways. Like I'm working with one leader. Every meeting, they start with a story of how they've made a mistake, they failed, or they need help.
Okay.
I like that.
I like that. Yeah.
It's
Yes.
amazing.
Jinx.
Yeah, right. Like we all need to do that. There's so many, and I'm glad my wife's not listening to this because she would be able to fill in a whole episode of all the mistakes I made probably in the last week.
Can you give me her phone number? I'll call her.
No,
Right.
She's not talking to you.
It is. So I do like the vulnerability, and even yesterday I was on a job site and was talking to one of my guys, and he mentioned we have an error code that keeps popping up in our CRM, and I told him on Monday that I would get it taken care of, and I was like, I messed with it some, but I failed to check back in with you. I'm sorry. On Monday, can you check it right now? And he checked it. It did not work. What I did, and I was like, you know what? I take full responsibility. I should have just stayed on that task and kept taking care of it before leaving to do something that was not even as important. It was just the next task on my list. And I said, but I'm going to stop right now and we're going to get it taken care of. And
Beautiful.
that was the thing, like with him. And the more I've found, the more that I do that, the more they're willing to tell me, because this particular individual, when he was first hired on board with us, he was very like macho, like I mean, I love this dude to death. He just was very much like, let's just do this. He was very commercial, not residential focused. And so I literally would say, hey, look, I want feedback. I want to do this and I want to do that. I want you to tell me. And he was like, no, not going to happen. I mean, he didn't say that exactly like that, but he was like, it was good. And I'm like, but it's not though. I can tell it's not. And the more that I've been, like, we do a weekly Zoom call, at least once a week anyways, but we have a Thursday morning Zoom call with service guys. And I'm like, hey man, look, I totally dropped the ball. This was my task for this week. I did not do it. I apologize for that. I finished partially, or I didn't even get started on it. I'm not even going to give you excuses why I didn't do it, but I failed to do that. The more that I've kind of done things like that, the more this individual particularly has been willing to call me and say, hey, look, this is a big issue. We got to get this fixed. I'm like, yes, thank you.
Beautiful.
I want to know, like, I've even had meetings before, and I got away from this a little bit. Last year, I used to do it a lot, but we would have in our meetings, I would have a question that I would ask everybody is, what's one thing that could be done to put us out of business? Like, give me a task that would put us out of business. And so then they're consciously thinking of all these things like, oh, we need to get this fixed. That's a huge red flag. This could put us out of business. And when I first started that, they were like, no, this is a perfect business. I was like, oh, right. Yeah, it is. And then towards the end of the summer, they're like, okay, I'll tell you. And they just like would light into me about stuff. And especially if they got overworked or lack of communication between the office and the service guys and the installers and stuff like that. But yeah, that vulnerability, it's a hard pill to swallow, because in my eyes, when I look in the mirror, I'm perfect. So,
I
mean, you are perfect, Terz.
God
please,
broke the
you want me to
mold
leave so you two can be
after
alone?
after he made me, he just broke that mold. So like, I get it. I have to take that burden on my shoulders, but.
Well, I mean, let me just say what you're doing is perfect. That kind of vulnerability is one of the keys to building trust. And the other thing is to get to know each other as a human being. And, look at the steering wheel is not the boss of the car. All right. The steering wheel plays a role, and you're playing a role as the leader of the team or the organization. And it is no more important than the gas pedal, the engine, the brakes, right? So you got to value that this is a system that works together. And for me, the organization chart, it's just to let you know who you should call when you're going to be late for work. I mean, that should be basically.
Really?
Yeah, and you ignore it as much as you can, because this is a role that you're playing, and it doesn't mean that you should somehow act like a boss or a boss hole, because that leads
A
to
boss hole. I like that.
there's a whole bunch of books called Boss Hole, and there's a reason, because that kind of leadership is called transactional. It's like people come to work because they're going to get paid or some other kind of rewards. But what you really want is what's called transformational leadership, where people willingly follow you because they admire you, because of the way you behave as a human being, are leadership behaviors. And they've been known for 30 years as well. There's a whole bunch of research on that. It's not rocket science either.
So let's dive into what you said there. You mentioned the org chart and kind of staying away from that. We have what's called, and I love that Disney's here. So he introduced an accountability chart versus an org chart. And would you say, like, the org chart, I kind of get what you're saying, but I want to make sure that I'm clear in this and I don't misquote you in the future or anything like that. Can you go into a little bit of detail of, like, kind of ignoring the org chart versus, like, why even spend time building an org chart if we're going to, I mean, and then is it a certain size when you're like, okay, org chart's kind of important?
Well, everybody knows who's the owner or who's the founder of the business. That's never going to be hidden. Some people actually create an org chart that's a tree where the owner or founder is at the bottom and their organization grows out from them, rather than being this top-down thing. But the other thing about, when you do work in the construction industry, for example, you have projects. So the fact that you happen to be the owner of the company doesn't mean you're the leader of this particular project. And you have different expertise in the various parts of the projects. So those project teams are organized around the work to be done, not some kind of structure that's independent of that work. Yes, everybody knows there's a founder, there's an owner, and who are the managers, but that doesn't mean that the manager comes on site and starts do electrical, right? You get the expertise mapped to the needs of the project. So I really like more of a project organization, and put the organization of the company. That's something that's really interesting to the IRS, and you've got to make sure you do the proper reporting of your forms and such. But the project organization is more important to getting the work done. And if you're smart as an owner, like some of the owners that I work with, you make sure that your people know, hey, I don't touch any customers directly. You guys are the ones making them happy. So you're the really important. Like, there was one guy at a big automobile factory here. He was the CEO of the automobile factory. He went down to the floor where the people were making the cars and said, hey, if I don't come into work tomorrow, how many cars are you going to make? They said, same number as always. He said, well, what if you guys don't come in? Wow, we're not making any cars. And let's be really clear who's getting the work done. And let's not value people just on position or title. That's so last century.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like, really love that, because I think people get caught up in that. Like, if, like, we talk about the high performing field technician, like, they perform well revenue wise, reviews, everything, and they get promoted to serviceman. Now they got a title, right? They're a boss, and it feels good to have that power.
But at that same time, being that person that's on a pedestal strictly based on their title, that's an immense amount of pressure. For why? Because now all of a sudden, if I don't show up to work, then there's an excuse for the organization to collapse if they treat me that way. Does that, I don't know, maybe that's me just thinking out of whack. Whereas, like, if we really put the emphasis on the people who were creating or completing the task at hand, then if they don't show up to work, then we can say, okay, yeah, there's going to be some issues that come up.
It's even worse, because some people are so their egos are so fragile and they're so vulnerable, that, not in a good way, but they're so worried about their position and their power that they will actually make their team weaker so that they'll be more needed. And the whole idea of great leadership is you strengthen your team. So if you don't come to work the next day, they still can go on without you, and they step up and they fill that void. But if you're really worried about your position and you're scared as a manager that you're somehow going to be replaced, then you keep your team weak so that your position is safe.
I've worked with people like that literally like they won't share what they do. They won't share access to it. Like nobody knows what you do because they're so worried about like somebody coming. And it speaks to your point, because people like that, there's a reason they're not, they want to feel important, or they need to feel important, versus they're not really in it for the team to build the team, which I guess would kind of help you figure out who your leaders are on your team too, and people that can strive to make the team better, and who maybe you should look at for those types of promotions as well.
Well, and let's think about this. You know, a lot of the work that you're in these kind of industries, this is a team sport. One person is never going to be able to do these projects. It's like if you play baseball and you send out one person to play against a 9-person team, they're for sure going to lose. And you send 9 great catchers out to play against a multidisciplinary team, they're going to lose. So you got to think about, we're playing a team sport. It's a game only a team can win. And so you got to find people who are willing to put the good of the team over their own personal status and ego.
That's some powerful stuff. And I think hopefully anyone that's listening to this, maybe you can look in the mirror too, because we're all probably guilty of this to some degree. Got to put ourselves ahead of, I did this great thing, right? Well, it's not solely about you, because you had help. Somebody else did some things that allowed you to have the time to do these things, or write that book, or make this thing, right? So it's all team, and you have to look at it from a perspective of who freed up your time, so you're able to go speak at that conference, or go do this thing or that thing. So I love what we're talking about here. This is great.
And if you really want to know, how the great leaders act, there's 30 years of research on exactly what they say and what they do. And the good news is you don't have to feel like a great leader. All you need to do is wake up every day with these 5 principles in mind and practice these 30 behaviors, and people will think you're a great leader, even if inside that little voice in your head that's always questioning you is saying, oh, you suck. So, and I'll give you an example. One of the 5 areas is called model the way. So, go make a peace sign. And I say, people, make a peace sign and please put it on your chin. And then I go like this and put it on my cheek. Everybody puts it on their cheek. So you have to act the way you want your people to act. What you say and what you do has to match. And if what you say and what you do doesn't match, they will not listen to what you say.
Totally agree with that. Yeah.
Where could we find, where exactly could we find those 5 principles and 30 behaviors?
Okay, now this is from a research called the Leadership Challenge. It's published in a book called The Leadership Challenge by Barry Posner and Jim Kouzes. I know Barry Posner personally down the street at Santa Clara University, and you can go on a website and look up the Leadership Practices Inventory. And I'll just give you an example. One of the 5 areas is encourage the heart. Now, when I think back on how my dad worked in the construction industry and all this stuff, I don't remember him speaking a lot about encouraging the heart for his team. All right. And here's what that means. You give your team members appreciation. You recognize and creatively reward people, express confidence in them, praise them, and celebrate accomplishments. I'll tell you, my dad would just say, get the goddamn thing done.
Yes. 100%.
100%. Get it done. So, the cool thing is this. If you choose to lead in this much more effective transformational way, you make more money. And there's no downside. You make more money and stock prices.
People are happier.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. Okay. So in a scenario where I'm gonna play out a scenario and tell me if this is an employee issue, or if it's a leadership issue, is
this like asking for a friend?
This is legit asking for a friend.
Okay. Sure. I got you, buddy.
Because I don't have to deal with it, so I can't give any advice on this situation. Okay. So let's say that you have employees that they don't want to work overtime due to the amount of taxes that are being taken out of their paycheck, and they're just flat out, I will not work Saturdays and Sundays. I know it's a fine line there, but it's also like to the point where they are going to walk off the job. And when they were hired on, they knew they were going to have to work potentially Saturdays, not really Sundays, but now it's changed a little bit. And I know that, and here's the thing, things change with government regulations after we've hired. And so like, give me your thoughts on that.
Well, I'll tell you what, we talked about employee engagement statistics a while back, and you guessed rightly that it's about 30% in the US. Globally, employee engagement on average is about 15%. The reason the US is the best in the world, yes, the US is the best in the world with 30% employee engagement, is that when people don't like their job in the US, they quit. So if you don't find ways to accommodate your people's needs and support them in their lives, they just leave. And right now, the way things are, about half of employees in the US are thinking about it.
I believe it.
So
there's so many open jobs. There's open opportunity everywhere.
So whose problem is that? That's not the employee's problem. The employees are highly sought after. That is the leader's problem. That how are you going to attract and engage and retain people in a situation where you're not willing to accommodate their needs? They want to have some really good reason. Maybe they want to just go off and have fun on the weekends, or maybe they've got some really big responsibilities they need to take care of. And by the way, I'm not diminishing the importance of having fun. It is really important to relax, unplug, and take a break. Just working all the time so you can be the richest person in the cemetery, there's no glory in that.
I have fun working. So there's that.
I do too. I love my job. I love working, and it's really hard for me to take a break. And there are other people, maybe they have a mom that needs some care. Maybe they've got kids that have special needs. Maybe their partner's driving them nuts. Maybe their house is falling apart and they need to fix that. It would really help to get to know them as a human being. So let's go back to our building trust, which is the number one cause of failure in teams. The other way to build trust is to get to know people. And so one of the things I do when I start working with people, I say, hey, tell me your life story starting at birth. Give me the 2-minute version. That way I can kind of get to know them in miniature. And then you got to find ways, right? On Friday afternoon, go out and have a beer together and chat and find out what else is going on in their lives, or say, hey, how are you doing really? And what's the worst thing you're dealing with? And see if they can trust you to get to know you as a human being, not just the boss and not just some employee.
So I've been told when I was the middle manager, I was told that you absolutely cannot be friends with your employees.
Yep.
And you cannot go out and have a beer with them.
Can I just do one thing to respond to that, Terse? Bullshit, excuse me. Bullshit.
So I really had a challenge with that because I was friends. So exactly what I say and Josh said not to do, do not hire your best service guy to become your service manager. That was me. And I am thankful that my boss at the time did not hear this podcast episode, because I was given that opportunity. I happened to thrive because I was like a closet nerd who really liked Excel and managing and people too. So it just happened to work out in that situation. But one of the things where I really struggled was the fact that I was told, you cannot be friends with these guys that I had been friends with for years prior because we worked side by side.
Let's just make a distinction here. It's like you can be friendly. Now, if you're going to use your friendship as the basis of making decisions, I think that's dangerous. But if you're friendly to your people and people understand and respect, hey, look, we're friends. And when we're at work, we're going to do the right thing for the overall, for the customer, for our company and for our team, and our friendship has to take a back seat to that. That has to be respected, of course. You can't be making decisions based on friendship. Otherwise, you'll be seen as playing favorites, and that will undermine your relationship with other people on the team.
It's almost like, I mean, you were in the Air Force. I was in the Air Force. Josh was too. We respecting the rank. We can be really good friends, but there's going to be times where I have to discipline you because of the rank. And I don't want to pawn it off on that either, because there's times where it's like, yeah, but like, if this was in the afternoon, you wouldn't be acting that way. Like if we were hanging out, at the lake, you wouldn't be acting this way. But then they are taking advantage of your relationship, in my opinion, if that's the case. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really inappropriate. So it's about playing your role. Look at the car, the steering wheel. When you're in the team, if you're the steering wheel of the car, you got to do the steering job. You can't abdicate responsibility for that just because your friend is the gas pedal and they want to do something different. You've got to think about what's the right thing for the overall good of the customers and the organization and the team. And then our relationship is important and not number one.
Yeah. Man, that's some good stuff. There's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot of gold that you dropped here, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all this and really being animated during a situation. This is a topic that
definitely are scrappy. I love it. Like, I love that. I just love the personality. It's awesome.
It's amazing.
I didn't say the F word the whole show. I think it's a huge breakthrough for me.
Oh, that's funny. Oh yeah. Well, we got some editing stuff. We can edit stuff. But it's really, this topic is a very touchy situation because there's a lot of, the average plumber, this has been a couple of years ago, was 56 years old, and that's been several years ago. And to say that, like, you're bringing in people who are very, very young into a world that the average plumbing technician's age is 56 years old. That's wild to think about. And to lead someone completely different than the way you've been led is a hard thing to wrap your head around. And so I really appreciate you sharing these tips with everybody.
Thank you so much. And I hope people will follow up and look at the Gallup employee engagement information and the leadership challenge information. That's based on 30 years of research of what really works, not theory. And this is something that can dramatically improve the effectiveness of your leadership, your teams, and make 20% more profit. That's
what's up. I like to hear that 20% profit thing. So where's the best place for people to reach out to you and learn more from you?
Go to my website, KimberlyWiefling.com, or call the police. They'll know where I am.
Awesome. Absolutely. Cool. I appreciate it. And Josh, do you have anything before I close?
No, I'm just enjoying the conversation with Kimberly here.
Absolutely. Kimberly, thank you again for coming on the show. Thank you for everybody that's listening to or watching this episode of Service Business Mastery Podcast. This is a podcast focused on the home service industry, business owners, managers, and technicians who are considering becoming business owners themselves. Until we talk again next time, I hope you have a wonderful and safe day and week, and we'll see you later. See you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Service Business Mastery. Now that you are equipped with essential business advice from this impactful conversation, you are one step closer to becoming the successful owner of your dreams. If this episode has been helpful to your business journey, don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and share it with other owners as well. Visit servicebusinessmastery.com to learn more.